Pedro slowed near the base, scanning the ground, the nearby bushes, anything that might hold a trace of her. "Lola," he whispered at first, stepping closer. Nothing. The night answered only with wind and rustling branches. His heart sank. "Lola!" he called again, louder this time. Still nothing. But then a bark. Faint. Distant. Hope surged through him like a wave. "Lola!" he shouted, spinning toward the sound. Another bark, clearer this time, carried through the bushes. He ran, stumbling across uneven grass, calling her name again and again, following the voice like it was a lifeline. The sound grew stronger until he stopped at a thick tangle of shrubs near the far end of the lawn. Carefully, he parted the branches. There she was. But the moment Pedro saw her, he forgot how to breathe. Before we start, smash the like button and make sure to subscribe if you haven't, and hit that notification bell so that you won't miss any new stories. Pedro unlocked his shop, the faint clang of the door echoing through the quiet street. As he set up for the day ahead, his thoughts were focused on the hours of work before him. The campus, however, was waking up, and so was his shop. Pedro had started his food cart at just 19, a small hot dog stand outside the college gates. Over the years, his business had grown, becoming a student hotspot. The simple but tasty fare, along with Pedro's welcoming nature, turned his cart into a small empire right at the heart of campus. Pedro had a way of spotting the students who needed a little extra help, those struggling financially or emotionally. Without a second thought, he'd offer a free meal or give them a discount, ensuring no one ever left his cart hungry. It was another busy morning at Pedro's shop. He was taking an order from a student when he noticed Lola walking toward him, her usual leaf gently gripped in her mouth. She stopped just outside the line, tail wagging, and waited, just like a regular customer. Pedro chuckled quietly, his eyes meeting Lola's. She waited patiently, her eyes on him, the leaf still in her mouth. As the line moved forward, Lola stepped closer, never rushing, as if she knew that she had to wait for her turn. Pedro finished with the student in front of him and smiled at Lola. "Here you go, girl," he said, gently taking the leaf from her mouth. Lola responded with a soft wag of her tail, waiting expectantly. Pedro reached for a sausage, placing it carefully in her mouth. Without a sound, Lola trotted over to the large tree next to the shop, content with her prize. The students around him glanced at the scene with a mix of amusement and curiosity. Pedro watched Lola enjoying her sausage without a care in the world and chuckled to himself when he heard ooh and ahs coming from the crowd and a couple of students taking Lola's videos. A year ago, Lola was nothing more than a timid, stray pup with soft fur, oversized ears, and a wary gaze. She wandered the campus grounds, a tiny figure darting between benches and bushes, always alert, always alone. Most students thought she belonged to someone until they realized she didn't. Pedro had seen his fair share of stray dogs in the area. Some barked, some begged, and some simply passed by. But this little pup, quiet, observant, kept showing up under the tree near his shop, never causing trouble. At first, Pedro didn't pay her much attention, but Lola stayed. Day after day she'd lie beneath the tree, occasionally glancing his way, her ribs just slightly visible under her light coat. One late autumn afternoon, something changed. Pedro looked up from the sizzling griddle to see Lola no longer just lounging nearby, standing in the queue with the rest of the students. She held a green leaf gently in her mouth, waiting behind a tall boy with a backpack. Pedro blinked, unsure what to make of it. Why was she giving him a leaf? For a moment, he hesitated. Then she gave a short bark and nudged a leaf forward with her snout, as if insisting on her turn. He glanced around, hoping someone might explain what was going on, but the students in line looked just as puzzled. That's when a student laughed. "She's trying to pay with that leaf!" Realization washed over Pedro. Lola had seen people paying with dollar bills. In her mind, a green leaf must have looked close enough. Without a word, he took the leaf like it was real money and handed her a sausage. She took it gently, tail wagging. That moment marked the beginning of something special. Every morning since, at exactly 11 a.m., Lola would show up with a fresh leaf in her mouth. She waited in line, exchanged it for a sausage, then headed back to the tree to eat and nap. It became a campus ritual. Students began timing their breaks to watch the exchange. Before long, Lola's quirky habit turned into a full-blown spectacle. Phones emerged as soon as she appeared, and her charming behavior spread online. Business soared. More people came first for the dog, then for the food. Pedro, overwhelmed by the sudden rush, hired an assistant to help. But amid the busy days, Lola remained his constant. She was no longer just a stray, she was his morning companion and, unintentionally, his most successful marketing draw. She became the face of the business. A student designed a cartoon of her with a leaf in her mouth. He wanted to adopt her properly, to give her a real home, but his wife had severe allergies, so bringing Lola home wasn't possible. Still, he cared for her deeply. He placed a soft bed beneath the tree, brought her toys, and laid out a blanket for cold days. She accepted it all with quiet gratitude, napping peacefully under the branches after her daily visit. But one day, she didn't come. It was a busy morning, and Pedro barely noticed the time. Only after the last plate was handed out did he check his phone. 11:36 a.m., no Lola. A knot formed in his chest. He scanned the street and tree but saw nothing. The worry stayed with him all day. The next morning, he opened shop with a growing sense of dread. At 5 minutes to 11, he stepped outside. Nothing. 10 more minutes passed. Still no Lola. Joseph, one of his regulars, stepped forward. "Let me help. I'll make a missing poster." Within 20 minutes, Joseph had sketched a clean, striking poster Lola mid-stride, leaf in mouth, her name in bold above a brief description. Another student offered to print copies, and by mid-afternoon they had over 100 ready to distribute. Pedro assumed he'd be taping them up alone, but before he could begin, a small group of regulars showed up to help. By sunset, posters fluttered across campus lampposts, bulletin boards, even above Lola's dog bed near the tree. Now, all they could do was wait. 3 days passed. No signs, no tips, no meaningful sightings. Messages trickled in encouraging words from students and professors. "She'll come back. Don't lose hope." A week had passed. Pedro still caught himself watching the street, clinging to hope. Any distant bark stirred it only to let it crash moments later. As the day ended and Pedro wiped down the last table, his phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. His heart raced. The note was brief and chilling. Someone had seen a black and white dog hit by a car a week ago just outside campus. They'd reported it to the police but had tried to forget it until they saw the poster. Pedro stared at the message, his stomach sinking. His hands trembled as he typed back, asking for the police station's details. Within minutes, he had the address. He locked the cart and rushed out, keys in hand. When he reached the station, he didn't pause. Bursting through the door, he went straight to the front desk, breath ragged. "The dog," he said, "hit by a car last week, black and white. Please do you know what happened to her?" The officer looked up, his face neutral at first, then shifting as he recalled. "Yes, we had a report. The dog didn't make it. She passed shortly after, cremated 2 days later." Pedro stood frozen, tears welling. The officer's voice softened. "Was she yours?" Pedro nodded. "She was my Lola." The officer paused. "Strange. The tag said Rusty. Are you sure it was her?" Pedro's breath caught. A flicker of hope sparked. "Rusty?" he asked. "Can I see a photo?" The officer pulled up a picture. Pedro stared and exhaled sharply. Black and white? Yes, but not Lola. It was a Boston Terrier. Grief mixed with relief. That poor dog was gone, but Lola might still be out there. Lost, maybe hurt, but alive. Pedro whispered a shaky thank you and left the station. Outside, he stood motionless, torn between hope and fear. She was still missing, still in danger. He couldn't go home. Instead, he drove back to the shop. The street was dark, the storefronts shut. Inside, he left the lights off, except one. He looked toward the corner under the tree, remembering Lola with her leaf, patiently waiting in line. Then it hit him. The leaf was always the same kind, same size, shape, color. She wasn't picking at random. She had a source. Pedro sat up. If he could find that tree, maybe he could find her. He searched the shop and found one of her old leaves, dry and curled. He took a photo and uploaded it to Google Images. The result? American Beach. Not a street tree needed space, open ground, and he knew just the place. Pedro jumped up, grabbed his keys, and ran toward the west wing of campus, toward the old humanities lawn. He reached the open field, breath ragged. Under the glow of a street lamp stood a wide tree with arching branches. He approached, heart pounding, scanning the ground. "Lola," he whispered. "Nothing." He called louder. Still nothing. Then a faint bark. He spun, heart racing. "Lola!" Another bark. Clearer. He ran, stumbling across the lawn, following the sound like a lifeline. It led him to a thicket of shrubs. He pushed the branches aside, and there she was, Lola curled in dry leaves, thin, tired but alert, and beside her 2 tiny pups nursing quietly. Pedro's breath caught, so this was why she hadn't come. He dropped to his knees, tears in his eyes, and gently scooped her up. Then, one by one, he placed the pups into his jacket pocket, warm, safe. He raced back to the car and drove straight to the vet. They were taken in immediately. After a thorough exam, the vet smiled. "She's just weak. The pups are healthy." Relief crashed over him. They were okay. That was all that mattered. In the days that followed, Lola gained strength. Pedro built her a cozy doghouse outside his home, lined with blankets and covered for shelter. He adopted her fully, unable to risk losing her again. The pups stayed too. Their little family was whole. Now, every morning, Lola rides shotgun in Pedro's truck, ears flapping in the wind. She's still the star of the shop, the reason smiles return, stories are shared, and customers linger. Only now, she no longer needs to pay with a leaf.